Listen, I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's webinar series, to this morning's episode. And today we're very fortunate. I'm really excited about today, and you're going to learn a lot here, as am I. My name is Andy Biting, and I'm going to be your co-host today with my good friend Scott McIntosh. Now, today's episode is called Shred Your Paper-Based Process. And it's going to focus on how you can move from those mounds of paper to streamline automated processes that help your team really focus on customers where they should be focusing their time nowadays. Now, I know a number of you are looking for different approaches that can help your team streamline these processes, especially with so many people working from home right now, and that's what we're going to be covering today. Now, we're fortunate to have a couple of guests, or a few guests with us this morning. The first one is Jeremy Noonan. He's an expert on the subject. Jeremy is a repeat digital entrepreneur, having founded both Compass Aquaculture Solutions as well as Torque IT Digital Solutions. Now, Torque IT Solutions aims to digitize manual processes and streamline enterprise landscape into cohesive systems. Welcome, Jeremy, to our episode this morning.
Thanks, Andy. Happy to be here.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And also, back by popular demand, we have Salil Menindal. Salil was with us last week with our robotics process application and his demos. And this week, he's going to be here to talk to us about how he works with clients to remove paper from their processes. Welcome, Salil.
Thanks, Andy, and good to see you again, and hi, audience.
Yes, and as of similar as last week, Salil is joining us all the way from India, so we're fortunate to have you here. And Salil, you have Mrugakshi with you as well today, right?
Yes, Mrugakshi is here. Mrugakshi will say quick hi as well.
Hi, Mrugakshi. All right, so I want to just start off with a quick question. Maybe Jeremy, I'll start with yourself. What are you seeing? What are you observing nowadays with your clients that you're working with businesses? During this crisis, what are you observing from your standpoint? Businesses, what are they doing? What are they craving? What are they needing nowadays? Just like to get your vantage point, your point of view.
Yeah, definitely seeing multiple different clients we work with, and to think we weren't already fully dependent on our computer systems and digital systems to drive business, well, even more so than ever now. And that's with people we're working in public and private sector. Like the whole topic of today around paper. I was talking with a lawyer the other day, and I know if anyone works in and around legal, the mounds of paper that those folks deal with, well, they're actually at a point now where if the lawyers are considering to move away from paper, then I think it's kind of a good sign that everyone is, so definitely seeing a lot of that happening. Just how can we, streamline this stuff? How can we make it easy to upload, attach, send around, just cut the printer out
Altogether. Yeah. Salil, how about yourself? What are you seeing these days during these crazy pandemic times that we're all dealing with right now?
Absolutely. So I agree with Jeremy completely, right? So my clients typically are wondering, where are my papers? Because snail mails are not working anymore. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to access their fax machines. And second question is, what do I do with my papers? I don't have people who have access to the papers. They are not able to look at the papers and enter data into their systems of records. So they're going completely crazy. And I must say, Andy and Scott, this is a very, very apt time to talk about shredding papers, right? So how do I go paperless? What can I do in a paperless state? So perfect timing for picking up this.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward, and I know I'm going to learn lots. Scott, I'd love to get a commentary from you. What are you thinking these days?
Well, probably just piling on at this point, but certainly, one of the things I've noticed is, when COVID hit first, a lot of companies had to put a tremendous effort into their communications and how they stayed connected. So people implemented Zoom or Microsoft Teams and things like that, and that was a big enough change. And a number of the companies I work with and entrepreneurs I know, they did that over the first few weeks, and then there was sort of a brief period of congratulations, but then sort of a realization that, okay, that really didn't make any of my business processes accessible at home though. And and then the paper and the Excel and the desk side chats and all that were built into things really became prominent. So I think things like we'll talk about today are sort of the rest of the journey, and it's a little more difficult than rolling out Zoom, but it's not nearly as difficult as it used to be. And that's I think you're going to see a couple different approaches here, and I think the theme is this is it's not an insurmountable challenge to loop back and fix up some of those paper heavy processes. I mean, if you're in legal, healthcare, transportation, there's a lot of industries that are still kind of awash in paper. So I think both Jeremy and Salil Magashi have some pretty compelling things to show us. Looking forward to it.
As am I. Yeah, thanks, Scott. So I know even in our own company, we just really, that I'm partners with Tula Media, we just recently made the decision to go completely virtual as a company and giving up our office space. And yeah, I mean, everything needs to be in the cloud because we're not handing papers around the office anymore. So really looking forward to it. So just a quick housekeeping. As we're going through the webinar, if people do have questions, put them in the chat function. I encourage you to put them in the chat function. But before we get started, I do want to prompt just a quick feedback from people who are joining us today. And if everybody could just take a few seconds, open up the chat function. There's a little drop down menu there, and make sure you're chatting not just with the panelists, but to panelists and attendees. And I'm going to give everyone 10 seconds to just type in a few words as to what you're feeling, what you're looking forward to. Maybe if you have just what you're thinking right now as we're going into this webinar about streamlining and shredding the paper out of our office. So I'll give you 10 seconds to just fill in some thoughts there. I'm going to put in one of my own here. Looking for alternatives to our current manual markups for our jobs. That's a good one. Yeah, keep the comments coming. It is interesting because even a lot of the work that we always did manually, we should be looking at setting up more virtually and automated. Haven't recently moved to remote offices. It's difficult to pass paper back and forth. Yeah, looking for ways to reduce physical paper. Awesome. Okay. Well, with that, why don't I hand it over to Jeremy? And if you want to share your screen, and you can start to go through your presentation. And I'm just going to turn my camera off and mute myself here as you take it away. And you're on mute there, Jeremy.
Oh, here we go. All right. Thanks, Andy. No, that's great. I'm going to get my PowerPoint started here and we'll walk through it. So Andy did a great job of introducing me, and I'll just kind of follow up by saying that personally, I'm really excited about the current state of these cognitive services as they've been branded, or kind of like my first slide's going to tell us here, artificial intelligence, which I think is kind of historically a bit of a scary word. People kind of think negative things or think bad things, Terminator robots and whatnot. But I'm really happy. I've been, involved in IT development, software solutions for well over a decade at this point, and it's been great to see the path that these things have been taking. So, your tech giants are out there right now, and what they're doing is they're commoditizing these services, and these services they're going the same direction that a lot of stuff has in the IT world. They're going up to the cloud, they're kind of pay for use, they scale as you need them. And the great part of it is they have these really smart teams, really capable teams of people that are building these tools and staying on the cutting edge, and they're making them accessible to folks like us that really just specialize in working with businesses, understanding business needs, and bringing that tech into the business. So it allows folks like us to implement them, and it allows the giants to continue to refine what's out there so that things continue to get better and better as we go forward. And I'm going to say that most of the stuff I'm talking about today is brought to you from Microsoft Azure. And the reason I really, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else, but why I really like Azure myself is because if you guys are already using Teams, if you're using Office 365 and Outlook for your email, I'm certain you're using Word and PowerPoint and Excel. All that stuff kind of gets tied together, and you can make use of everything under one landscape. We've got Power Apps, which is another tool we've been playing with lately, and it's just been a great tool to get projects, to get applications thrown together affordably, quickly, easy to change, and all that sort of stuff. And we can tie that in with these cognitive tools that Microsoft's made available to us. And then I'm going to describe these tools here, and there's just one thing to kind of keep in mind when you're dreaming up how could we use these tools or services inside of our company. Once you can take a file or a piece of paper and you can extract the text from it, well, then a computer can work with it. And once it's in text, then it's we can do anything we want with it. So, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So whether you're taking video or imagery or written notes or scanned images or, paper, in my mind, Excel files and PDFs are not really all that different, because until a computer can interpret them, it's down to human consumption, and you're still kind of stuck in that human paper-based world. So here's some of the services that Azure has available, and we've been playing with them a lot. I shouldn't say playing, we've been implementing them a lot over the last several months, and just to kind of get your gears turning on what the different ones are. And these are just the ones I thought were most relevant to today's presentation. They have plenty of them. And you're going to see a demo quickly here around the form recognizer. And that's, you can take images or PDFs and you can send them off to this service, and it will extract all the data from it, and you can pipe it into business workflows. And you're going to see a little demo around how we took that and used it for invoice processing. Computer vision's a really cool one that I enjoy playing with. You can take images and send it up to the service, and it will tell you if there's a picture of a dog in the image, it will tell you a dog. And if there's a park in the background, it'll tell you park. And if it's sunny out, it'll say it's sunny, and it'll give you all sorts of context around what you see in the images. So if you have a bunch of images kicking around from marketing or your products or whatever, you can pump it up through there and automatically kind of group your images together. Speech to text, kind of self-explanatory, but if you have recorded meeting notes, or if you want to start recording meeting notes, you can process those through and then start looking for topics and themes in your meeting notes just by extracting them straight out of the audio files. You can do the same thing with the video indexer. It kind of takes the speech to text and the computer vision, and it allows you can actually do facial recognition and say, okay, why don't you take all of our videos, and I want to see every time that Scott and Andy are in video together and they're talking about paper, can you find me those sections of the video? And the computer will do that for you. And And the ink recognizer is neat as well, because you can start taking snapshots of your whiteboards and convert those into digital notes and have them searchable and indexable. And anytime you want to find something, oh, when we were planning project X and we had a whiteboard session around it, where's our notes on that? And then all of a sudden it becomes pretty easy to search and dig that stuff up, because it's all been converted into that text format that I mentioned earlier. Once you got your text, you're good to go. So this is just a quick little diagram on the demo that I'm about to show you folks. And this is something that we threw together quite rapidly, using these tools brought in the Microsoft landscape. And what it is you can send email attachments into this service, and I'm going to go back one here, and it will it'll determine, is that a PDF, is it an Excel file? It'll look for values in the form. If it's an invoice form, and it's going to rip out your invoice values, it's going to pump it into your accounting database. If it's a timesheet, if you have employees that are working on different projects and they're submitting timesheets, you can have those processed. And then we threw together a quick Power Apps front end just to show you how quickly these things can be pulled together and all work together. So I just have a screen recording here that I'm going to click play on, and I'll show you folks here. This is an invoice, and you can see it's from March 2020, and it's for $14.72. And we've got these headings on them that you would see on most sorts of invoices. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to email it to, I'm going to say it's our accounting rep or somebody in bookkeeping. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead here in a second, and I'm going to attach this PDF to an email. And then I sent that email in, and what's going to go on, and this is a Power App, and Power Apps are kind of click and drag development. You don't need hardcore developers to throw these together. So you could see there was 4 months worth of invoices there, and that email got sent in the background. And I'm going to go backwards here in a second. And so there's our November invoice, just showing it's attached up in the Power App. But then I'm going to come back and I'm going to refresh this here, and you can see that it went and it processed that March invoice in the background for $14.72, and it's got everything kind of broken out, how many days it was, monthly price. We got the PDF gets attached, all that kind of stuff. So that is strictly done using those cognitive services. There was no human interaction in that. We were able to build these workflows rapidly inside of Microsoft's landscape and have all this stuff done. So you're looking at here, these are timesheets. So just to kind of illustrate that you can work with multiple different types of files and different use cases, you can see right now we've got 3 time entries for a different project we were working on. And on the background there, you're going to see there's another email being pumped into this system. And what it's going to do is it's going to go along and it's going to process that time entry from an Excel file, and it's going to pop that into the Power App as well. So these Power Apps, as I've been mentioning, these are something that you don't need to be a programmer to build these. I would say if you're an advanced level Excel user, you could do a lot of this type of development. And especially if you're already using SharePoint inside your company, or if you're using O365, those types of tools, you already have access to these tools and you can start using them. And you can integrate them with any other sort of business system you have accessible to you. And I've been really impressed. Some of these tools, we'll start on Power Apps because of the speed you can move inside of it and the affordability. And a lot of the times, you might get an application to the point where it can just stay in Power Apps forever and it'll continue to provide value. Or it might evolve to something where you say, you know what, we actually end up using this extensively. So we're going to go and we're going to build a more sophisticated application around this. So that was a video kind of showing the 2 services there. That's the PDF AI processing, send your invoices in. And I piped it into a Power App. There's no reason you couldn't have it piped into QuickBooks or piped into any other sort of accounting system or any other workflow. Like really, it's kind of, you can dream as much as you want around it, but that was just a simple one to show you folks. how it all works. And so here's the tools that we used here. So we had logic apps on the background, which kind of did the control flow of, okay, take the email and send it here. It's all running on the Azure cloud. The Power Apps was the front end. We've got our cognitive services, which I talked about a minute ago, and it's all kind of under this Microsoft 365 hood. And, you know, like I said, I like it for the single subscription and the integration factor. And, you know, I am not affiliated, like I'm not on Microsoft's payroll here pumping up their services. I'm just a personal fan of them. And just to reiterate on some of those points, like these tools have evolved to a place where, you know, they can be built very rapidly. You may have people working with you now that could do a lot of this type of stuff, or, you know, would get in touch with folks like us to help build these systems. But you're looking at putting some of these systems in place. They start in and around the 10K range, whereas in the past, if you wanted to get into AI, PDF processing and stuff like that, you're looking at $100,000 just to get in the door, and you know, millions into those types of projects. So these tools they're accessible to businesses of all sizes these days. And one thing I just want to end on is, you know, there's always this fear if people are scared as we continue to automate things that it's going to, oh, well, what's going to happen to jobs, or what's going to happen, you know, are we going to be able to keep people employed? Is it going to, you know, all the bad things that may come with it? And I tend to look at it a little more optimistically, and that, you know, some of these kind of boring and repeatable jobs, you know, those can fall over to kind of our robot friends, and it's going to allow the human creativity to focus on, you know, things that are maybe more interesting and can drive the business forward more. You got your content generation and customer engagement, marketing, and Scott made the point to me the other day that, you know, a lot of these jobs that are going to happen, well, we don't even know what they are yet because we're not there yet. You know, if you think back 10 years from now, I certainly wouldn't have thought that I'd be integrating with cognitive services, but now that's part of what I do just because of the change in the landscape. So I really think we're in a great era, and we're in the great beginnings of these new tools, and very excited to see how they continue to grow and influence business. So that's my quick overall on cognitive services. And yeah, you can check us out. We're at Torque IT, and any questions for me, feel free to follow up with. But yeah, thanks for listening.
Hey, Jeremy, Scott here. A question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I think I know the answer to it, but if you had a different type of invoice and you inserted it into your process there, what sort of, you know, setup would you do?
Yeah, so that's all kind of on the front end of the process, and the term in the cognitive world or the AI world is training your model. So what we would do is, say you have a half dozen, or maybe you have 50 vendors that you regularly deal with, is you would spend the early days, you know, maybe a day or two, taking a handful of invoices and just kind of training up the system on what it could expect to see. And it'll actually build its model up. The more you feed it, the smarter the model gets, and then the less likely it is for anything to slip through the cracks, because, you know, at the end of the day, most invoices end up taking a very similar, you know, they got a date on them, they've got a table of line items, and then they've got some totals at the end. And the more you end up feeding this thing to train it off the get-go, the better it's going to be at accommodating anything that it hasn't seen before. But then, you know, if it does find something and it doesn't know how to handle it, you just kind of branch off your workflow and put it into a box and say, hey, we need to handle these ones. Or you could even flip it off to the accounting department and say, okay, you're going to manually do these ones, and then you're going to tell us about them, and then we're going to come in and train the model up on those ones, and then, you know, keep moving forward.
And that's the part that's so interesting to me, because I've seen these, you know, scanning and character recognition solutions in the past, definitely, but you had to basically set up the form every time and tell it where the invoice date was and the dollars. And then if your vendor changed their invoice in any way, your little system broke. And, you know, I think it's pretty cool how this one's able to learn and adapt. And
it's funny, it does the opposite, because you're saying you had to kind of draw a box around where the values were. Well, whenever you hit these services, they actually tell you where the values are. They come back and say, yes, we found this and this is where we found it. So they're kind of, yeah, they're evolved way beyond that.
Thank you.
Another question I have, Jeremy, is what about the approval process of an invoice? Because quite often, you know, paper invoices come in and the person that quoted that job needs to verify that, you know, that amount is what was quoted or that amount is in line with our costing model. Like how, again, you know, they from the invoice, the information is not there simply on the invoice, but I got to think that there's other ways to build in the costing modeling, cost modeling, that type of thing as well for verification purposes.
I can think of very simple human-driven processes there, all the way to very sophisticated ones that, you know, might grow over time. Is okay. Your easy one is you have two inboxes, and the first the invoice comes in, it just gets the quick human once over, and then they forward it off to the robot and it does the rest once they're happy with it. And then you might get into more sophisticated workflows where maybe you do have a quoting tool or an estimates tool or something that's out there, and you can say, okay, this is going to reconcile up against this, and as long as it's, you know, within a set parameter, it could maybe it could fly through the automated flow. And then of course, you know, you're always going to have your edge cases, and a lot of the time the edge cases are probably best handled by an individual, at least at this point. So that's where you could say, okay, for the 90% that are just going to fall in line with expectations, they're going to flow through this automated channel. And then the remaining 10% might be more traditional, but then you still got to be happy that you've automated 90% of that work, you know? So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, folks.
So we're going to move over to Salil for Salil's presentation. And as we go through here, if you have questions, do put them into the chat function, and Jeremy and Salil will be going through those at the end of the session here. So Salil, take it away.
Thank you, Andy, and lovely presentation by my co-panelist, Jeremy. And very rightly he said, right? So I still remember, say about 10 years back, Python actually became a necessity, and everybody was doing Python programming. And cognitive sciences or cognitive computing is actually following the similar trend, right? With so many papers around in a business world or even a personal world, cognitive sciences are going to be really, really important. So me and Brugakshi, we are going to actually talk about why at all to shred a paper, right? So our next slide actually will provoke your thoughts, right? You will ask, why do I even shred my paper, right? So if you are an entrepreneur or if you are a manager, you will immediately realize the first point, which is reduce employee workload, right? So if you are an insurance agent or insurance company, or you are processing tons of papers in banks, people spend about 80-90% of their time processing the papers, looking at the papers, sorting them, cleaning them, straightening them, and very less time today is spent on extracting meaningful data out of it, right? So, and if you have a huge inflow of papers, and there can be certain seasonal activities, right? So insurance goes through seasons of claim renewals or claim applications. We did a recent survey with a dental insurance firm, and they said we have our peak loads in our vacations, right? And that's when most of us plan dental surgeries or dental procedures, unless it's really emergency, and the load goes up. So obviously we'll put extra people to take care of that load, and in turn company is faced with challenges of higher wage costs. So one is to reduce your employee workload, improve the employee satisfaction rather than they being just the paper pushers or paper processors or paper sorters. They can actually do much more with the data inside that. And obviously, you're reducing your cost of operation. Second was increased data process efficiency. Right? Today, we are all prone to human error if the task is repetitive in large in number and redundant. Right? So, but by shredding the paper and applying cognitive technologies or intelligent document processing, you are able to improve the data quality. You are able to improve scope of data collection because robots or software bots do 24/7 work and collect a lot of data than generally a human would do. What it results into, it can actually cut down the customer service times or SLAs, right? Because you're able to collect the data fast, you are able to analyze the data fast, and you're able to provide a faster customer service or a stakeholder management. Thirdly, we all know a lot of personal identifiable information or a lot of healthcare data is today very, very secured, and there are a number of regulations around keeping this data very, very secured. Similarly, a lot of banking transactions have sensitive data, and we keep hearing about data getting leaked and that leaked data actually causing millions of dollars of loss to the account holder and in turn to the bank. Now, what happens with intelligent document processing or cognitive technologies is we can actually train bots to handle a lot of these sensitive data fields, and they are not at all seen or handled by humans. Right? So there is a minimum contact of human beings with sensitive data. Thus, it helps organizations comply with stringent regulations. So these we thought are key compelling reasons today. One is related to your employees' well-being. Second is around customer turnaround times, and third is really around reducing regulatory risks. These are the key reasons to shred the paper. So Mrugakshi, my colleague, will take over and give her views on where is the data and what we can do with it.
So as you can see on the slide, it's titled "Where is my data?" And it's important to be aware of why automation in the first place. 20% of all data is in a structured format. And what that really means is we can analyze the data because it's already in a format that is usable. But 80% of our data is in an unstructured format. And what that means is it's in different formats of documents. It's in a PDF format, Word documents, spreadsheets, presentations. And when it comes down to really analyzing all of the data that you have collected, it becomes increasingly tedious because you have data in a lot of different places. And that brings me to the next slide here, titled "Documents Are Everywhere." Now, I want you to take a second to think about the last time you needed to achieve a desired task, but in order to do that, you needed to find documents that were in multiple different systems or even with multiple different people. I know that when I have to process an invoice, I need to go into my Google Drive, and then I also need to go into a different email, and I have to download the invoice from a different attachment in finding that email from somebody else. So even for me, it's a tedious process, and I don't process large volumes of data. But bringing your attention to the circles that you can see on one side of your screen, in industries such as the manufacturing, healthcare, government, financial services, you have volumes of documents that are spread across multiple systems, multiple databases. And the function that automation does is it takes away the job of a human to acquire all of these documents and gives that job to a software robot. And that brings us to the next slide here, where Salil will take you through what we have identified as a streamlined manual document capture process.
Right. So We actually looked at some of the processes which have been followed either in bank or in insurance companies or even in retail or logistic firms, right? So today what they do is they have tons of sources through which the documents come in. For an example, customer or your service provider may send you emails. There are a lot of paper-based faxes. There is still 50 or 60% of the documents still come through snail mail or couriers, physical couriers, where people print the paper or type the information in the form, take a printout, and then courier it to you, or send it through post. Then there are PDFs, right, which come through emails, or they are typically collected on media drives and like OneDrive or Box, and those links are shared with us. People in the back office really manually sort these. For an example, if there is a snail mail or a courier comes in and there are stains, people actually today have large mail rooms. So somebody who's in insurance industry will quickly understand that they run huge back offices mail rooms where people clean up the pages, they'll go through scanners, they'll enhance the images, then they identify and classify the images manually. The next process is reading, right? They will quickly read through what the data is. They'll try to make a sense out of it. There are barcodes, they will do it manually through barcode reading. Then they will validate, right? They will typically, if there is a claim form, they will open up their system, do a quick lookup whether the claim form makes sense. They will compare with a whole host of ERP systems, verify it, and then start entering the data manually into ERP or system of records. Whereas what IDP does is very simple 5-step process. Mruga, you want to show the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what IDP does is IDP actually is a simple process, takes over everything from human beings. There are document classifier which document different, which identify different documents using artificial intelligence and cognitive bots. They can actually go through PDF files, they can open emails, they can go through scanned images and quickly identify whether it's an invoice or it's insurance form or it's a way bill and so on and so forth. They will start categorizing these documents very, very quickly. Apply and read your business rules. If it's invoice, you want certain metadata out of it, like party name, PO, items, rates. It can pick it up. It can very quickly process tickets, receipts, claims, and start reading the information out of it. Then it will interpret that information, right? That extracted data has to be in a format which your systems consume. So there are interpreter bots in between. They actually do data corrections, data batching, and finally, enter that data automatically into your ERP or database. And then there are analytical bots on top of it, which actually help you exploit the data, right? They will actually give, they can send reminders, they can send notifications, they can actually give you analytics or insights out of the data. So IDP actually takes over and reduces the manual work, which we showed you in the next slide, last slide. And my next slide will actually talk about some demos. So Mruga, do you want to run it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this demo is about invoice processing. And before I started, as you can see, initially you have to train a software robot to do what you want it to do, after which it analyzes documents. And then the user must review the results to kind of put that check mark saying, okay, this is exactly what I want. And that's kind of how the IQ bot learns what its process is supposed to be. So, oops, just a second, I'm gonna full screen this. All right, so right now we're creating a new instance, and this instance is to train this particular bot on processing invoices. So we're selecting the domain, making sure that the language is what we want it to be, and now uploading some sample documents. In this particular screen, we're actually just checking off exactly what we want extracted from the invoice. And now we create an instance. After this instance is created, we start the training of this particular bot. So as you can see, to the left over here, this is what the bot has extracted automatically, because we asked it to extract the invoice number. So it found that invoice number was a label, and then the value is what it extracted automatically as well. And just checking through, making sure that the date is what we wanted it to be. All of this, the bot has done automatically. Now, this is where we can see there has been an error. The label is terms, but the bot interpreted the terms to be FOB or intercom instead of net 30. And that's where you can correct what the terms is actually supposed to be, selecting net 30. And the bot then remembers, okay, next time I want terms, that's where I have to extract the data from. And this is just a human checking, make sure that these are all of the quantities that are required for extraction. So upon previewing the document, everything to the left is what has been extracted from the sample data set for invoice processing. Now all of this will be converted into a CSV file. So I'm going to skip to this part of the demo, where initially this is training the bot on extracting email attachments and then uploading these attachments onto the IQ bot that goes ahead and extracts the information that we trained it to extract. And then converts this into a CSV format. And another ability that it has is it is now connecting into an SAP and just filling in all of the extracted information from the CSV file into processing this particular invoice. Now, all of this is done behind the scenes, and the human in the loop comes in when there is an exception that needs to be corrected. So once all of this is prepared, as you can see, the data is read, and now it's time to check the data to make sure that there aren't any exceptions. So for example, this is just going to take us through, whoops, my apologies. There you go. So as you can see in the invoice date, there seemed to have been a period which was uncalled for instead of there being a slash. So once you correct that one time, the bot remembers, okay, that was a mistake and it's actually a slash and not a period. And this is how the user validates whether or not the data that has been extracted is the correct format. And in turn, the IQ bot learns either not to do it again or what to do again. In case you did want to watch this demo again, you can just go to YouTube and look for IQ bot invoice processing demo. It does have a voiceover. So coming back to our slides, that was an example of invoice processing, but there's a range of solutions or use cases that a bot can be applied to, such as claims processing, ticket processing, driver's license recognition and processing. There's all sorts of KYC as well, receipts processing. And these are just a snippet of a ton of use cases that can be programmed for a bot to conduct automatically. And this brings us to the last slide here, where it'd be awesome to discuss your use case, because all of these are examples and pre-tested use cases for other industries. But let's talk more about what you have experienced within your organization. And at this time, we can also take questions.
Thank you both so much. I find this very fascinating. So before we get started, Gordon had a question looking for alternatives to our current manual markups for our jobs. Is there any, and Gordon, by the way, you know, I'm sure Salil or Magashi and Jeremy would be more than happy to follow up as well with a question, you know, a phone call. But I'm just wondering, can you shed any light on that specifically? Looking for alternatives to our current manual markups for our jobs.
We get some more context on markups.
Gordon, if you're on the call, you can
engineering
elaborate on it.
drawings and designs type, is that what we're talking about?
I would suspect so.
Yeah.
No, Gordon, I know Gordon runs Metal Fab. It's they manufacture fire trucks. So yeah.
Oh, it's more workflow. Yeah, that's 10-page job sheet, 7 managers review. Yeah, that's that would be you could either take it out of paper or you could go in and out of paper with your workflow if you needed to. Yeah. Each participant marks up a drawing for review. Yeah, the drawings is more specialized and complicated, but there's certainly approaches to it. I don't think it's quite the technology we're looking at here, but yeah, that's a good takeaway, I think, for the group. I think that's a little more specialized than what we're looking at here, but certainly solutions exist in that, you know, engineering, manufacturing space.
And you might even be able to, just kind of thinking out loud and on the fly, is yeah, they're trying to use a PDF markup tool. That's kind of what I was thinking there, is there would be collaborative tools you'd be able to pull the document into and maybe get through your early revisions and stuff like that digitally, and not saying that the whole process maybe moves away from its traditional, but you might be able to move a lot of it, and then maybe the final steps would still stay traditional, but I'd have to see more about it.
Yeah, you'd have to look at it in detail.
I agree with you.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you, Jeremy. So you will need to actually look at mix of PDF markup as well as some AI or a cognitive tool, because if your drawings are the markups are on point, you really don't want a lot of time spending on it. But if they are off the mark, or if they are off the point, obviously you want the technology to highlight the outliers, and then it goes through a human in loop. So there can be there are technologies outside. We can actually send that. Well, of course, we don't work on them, but I'm happy to send some of the links for you to read through Scott and Andy.
Yeah, we could certainly arrange that. Okay, you know, as we're going through, if anyone else has specific questions as well, please send them in. But you know, as we're going through, but yeah, to that point, if Gordon, I would suggest following up with Salil or Jeremy, and you know, and just talk through you know, your process and see what they may suggest. Yeah.
Any question maybe for Salil and Magashi, just following on the presentation. So, you know, the stories are always so useful and interesting. Like what's, you know, like the intelligent data processing sort of flow that you showed us, you know, what's sort of an interesting story of one of your clients, you know, really getting the benefits from that, you know, like how did that go? And just maybe if you're able to take a minute or two on for instance, I think it's always interesting. Oh, I think you're on mute, Salil.
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry about that. So I would love to talk about one of the biggest banks that we worked with. They're a multinational bank, and we worked with their retail operations actually, and we built them a KYC. So KYC is nothing but the bank used to spend, or bank back office used to spend tons and tons of time reading through driving licenses, social security cards, or passports, and they used to link it back to the accounts. And in fact, we used IDP to process not only one time, where they could upload these images and we were extracting a lot of data. But for high value transactions, KYC documents are required time and again, right? They become a part of the document set. And what they used to do earlier is because of the human errors, the repetitive KYC document, even if it's wrong, they used to process it. And in the regulator audits, they used to get huge fines for not complying to KYC for large transactions. And this was a human oversight, right? If they read Don Joe or John Doe and done a KYC once, next time the John Doe comes, they would assume that that's his passport, right? But whereas our AI actually could differentiate between the original KYC document versus the repetitive KYC document, we used to match it. Similarly, the signature matches were done. And that way, organization actually not only dealt very, very safely, there was less fraudulent transactions. And thirdly, they complied to KYC every time, right? So they never get penalized by regulators anytime.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually could extract data using IDP. We could match the incoming records with the original system of records, highlight the anomalies or outliers. So such was the help through IDP.
What's the payback period on a project like that? Like, is that a high return on investment?
Indeed. So, typically what used to happen is based on the incoming load. So let's say if I'm processing a million transaction in a week, I would go back and put a math, right? So to complete million transaction in a week, I have 5 days. And in 5 days, if I have to complete million transactions, I'll need to put a workforce of, let's say, 1,000 people, right? Assuming per transaction a day. And then that's the way the maths used to go. And as soon as we deployed IDP bots, we realized the bots are processing at a 10x speed. They're operational 24 hours. And we could actually consume those 1,000 million incoming document in just about 2 or 3 days. So it was not only driving the savings in terms of processing time, but it also required less human efforts, because as Mrugakshi said, if there are outlier or if there are inaccuracies, is when the bots used to alert human for human in loop validations, right? And we realized we could actually do with just about 20% workforce, and half the time. So it was immediately recognized. So this ROI, return on investment cycle, is not really wrong, right? One can feel that within the first month of operation.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to comment on that as well, I know a lot of people on the call are not the big bank that has 1,000 people doing certain transactions, much smaller businesses. But the way I look at it too is that it gives an opportunity, if you can find ways to reduce, somebody in the office reducing 8 hours of their time every week by going through these, it allows them to work on higher level projects.
Mm-hmm.
And the payback is, I think, immense, because these simple processes can be done by these bots, or automated, so that the person can move up in the level of work that they're doing. And what I love about what I'm learning, because I'm new to a lot of this as well, what I learning last week and this week is that the AI can automate a lot of the mundane processes, but it also gives a mechanism to highlight the exceptions. So you can do it with confidence, knowing that, okay, where I used to have to process, maybe it's not 1,000 transactions in a week, but maybe it's, you know, a few dozen transactions, and knowing that those will be taken off my plate, freeing up whatever it is, 8 hours a week, and knowing that, you know, the 3 or 4 that are still going to be exceptions, I know with confidence that they're still going to be highlighted to me, right? You know, really reducing the workload and the time invested. So
Absolutely, Andy. In fact,
yeah.
so it actually becomes very, very important for small office or home office or individual consultants as well, right? Because some of the bots which are attended or unattended bots actually become your extra hands and eyes, right? So take a case of a CPA, right? CPA needs to juggle through at least about 5 or 6 sources of data to start cross-verifying the claims or the statements for his or her clients, right? And today the bots can do that task for him, right? All the CPA needs to do is sit with Muruga, sit with Jeremy, sit with Salil, program and learn, teach those bots what to do, right? So if you have 5 systems from where you want the data to be fetched, you want that data to be consolidated into a statement, and today that CPA must be spending a number of days doing that, right? And the bots can actually do that in a day or 2. And what it does to the CPA is actually he's able to process, or he or she is able to process multiple such clients. If the CPA was serving 10 clients because of his individual capacity, today that can grow 10x, because CPA is actually spending time analyzing it rather than collecting a lot of data.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. We do pride ourselves in ending on time, so I do want to draw this to a conclusion. Listen, everyone, look out for the email that will follow up. We'll send out the recording, as well as Salil, Magashi, and Jeremy's contact information. They're willing to jump on a phone call with anyone that wants to talk through their own individual questions afterwards. So look out for that email. Also, when you close out today, there is a feedback form. Please take out or feedback survey. Please take a moment to do that. That's really valuable. And next week, Scott, I think it's our final session, is it not? We're drawing to an end. We're going to be talking about business strategy, episode 9, business strategy, and in leading business in this new digital world. Scott and I are going to be co-hosting, co-presenting ourselves next week. And please spread the word. But thank you all so much. Jeremy, Salil, Magashi, thank you all so much for today. And,
thank you, Andy. Thanks, Scott.
It's my pleasure being here.
All right. Thanks so much.
Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. See you.
Okay, thanks.